Okay, we're solving exercises of the study guide. We were working with operations with complex numbers, and we already finished 2 exercises, so now we're going to continue with the next one. This one's a little bit more complicated because we have a power of an imaginary unit. We need to transform this exponent into basically simplified form. Instead of 43, we should get an exponent that is between 0, 1, 2, or 3. And depending on the answer, how we're going to deal with them. And also, like, we also have another power, basically the same idea as the previous one. But we also have a complex number that is raised to the power of 2. Okay, so we're going to solve this thing also somewhere else. What we're going to do is transform each one of these things into a simplified form. Okay, so let's begin with the power. I know that in the exercise I have number 3, letter I, okay, but the 43 I'm going to simplify it divided by 4. We always divide by 4 when we're trying to simplify the exponents of the power of an imaginary unit. Okay, so we're gonna divide 43 with 4. So 43 divided by 4. Okay, there will be 1 in here. I subtract this thing, I get 0. I move 3, and it will be 0 in this case. 0, I subtract 3. Basically, the remainder is 3. Okay. So that remainder is going to be the new exponent. So this thing is going to be raised to the power of 3 minus. I'm going to have to work with this operation somewhere else. I'm not going to do it here because then I'm going to have a really huge process. I recommend you to, every time you have these steps, you do them somewhere else. Okay, like the back side of your notebook or whatever. Okay. So we're gonna work this thing somewhere else. Okay, it's 2i plus 1 squared. Okay, it's 2i plus 1 squared. Let's see if that's what we have in there. 2i plus 1 squared. Yes. Okay. The squared basically tells me that I am gonna have the parentheses twice. Okay, it's basically 2i plus 1 times 2i plus 1. So I'm going to use distributive property. 2i times 2i is going to be 4i squared. 2i times 1 is basically positive 2i. And I finished with this one, so now I'm going to multiply with 1. 1 times 2i will be positive 2i. And 1 times 1 will be plus 1. Okay. Now, what happens with an I squared? Remember that the I squared is basically a minus 1. So this is going to turn into minus 1. And then I'm going to multiply with a 4 and I'm going to get minus 4. Okay? And basically, short story, you change the sign of the number. If it's positive 4, then it's going to be now negative 4. So instead of doing all of this, I'm just going to put negative 4. Okay? I'm going to skip some steps and just say minus 4. Okay? What the I squared does is that it changes the sign of the number. Okay, now 2i plus 2i, they are like terms, so 2i plus 2i is going to be 4i. And the plus 1 I copied. Okay, now this minus 4 and this plus 1 are like terms, so I'm going to add them. Minus 4 plus 1 is going to be minus 3 plus 4i. So that's the number that's gonna be the answer of the power of 2. Okay, like 2i plus 1 squared is gonna be minus 3 plus 4i. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna put in here. But do you notice that there is a minus in here? There's a minus before the exponent. So I need to be careful with that. I'm gonna copy the minus, and then I'm gonna put inside parentheses, I'm gonna put the answer. Okay, and the answer was minus 3 plus 4i. Okay, that's basically what we got here minus 3 plus 4i, okay, plus 8i raised to, remember that when we have a huge exponent, we're going to divide it by 4 and see what's the remainder, okay? So we're going to divide 72 by 4. Okay, so this is 1, will be 4, 7 minus 4 will be 3, I copy the number 2, and 32 divided by 4 will be 8. 8 times 4 is 32, I subtract, and I will get 0. Okay, that's the remainder. Okay, remainder is 0. So this is basically I to the power of 0. Okay, but you know that when you have something to the power of 0, basically what you have is 1. In other words, it disappears because I already have the 8. 8 times 1 will be the same 8. Okay, so that's basically what I have so far. Now this part is kind of simple, like it's easier than what we had before. I to the power of 3 is negative I. Okay, if like the ones of us who have worked with complex numbers, we need to remember that I to the power of 3, or I raised to 3, is negative I. So I'm going to put minus I in there. Okay. And this minus that was outside is going to multiply each one of the numbers inside the parentheses. So it's minus times minus 3. That will be plus 3. And also minus times positive 4i. That will be minus 4i. Remember to multiply signs. When you have a minus outside of a parenthesis, you change the signs of the things inside. Okay, and you copy the plus 8. Then what are we going to do? We can multiply the 3 with the negative I, and we will get negative 3i. And we can copy the rest. Now you can see that we have like terms, like minus 3i and minus 4i. Those two are like terms, and the 3 and the 8. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the real numbers. 3 plus 8 will be 11. And then I'm going to continue with the imaginary numbers. Minus 3i minus 4i will be minus 7i. And that will be the answer for this exercise. Okay, it looks very short, but remember that we did a lot of processing here. Okay, otherwise it would have been a very long exercise. Okay, now the next exercise we're going to work with is basically a rationalization. We are asked to rationalize this thing, to transform it into a rational, something like that. Okay, this denominator shouldn't be a complex number. That's kind of like the goal. We need to get rid of this thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy the same operation, and we're gonna multiply the whole fraction with the conjugate of the denominator. Remember that the conjugate is basically the same numbers, like 2 and 3i also, but instead of minus, we put plus. Basically, we changed the sign of the middle. If this one were plus, then I would have to put minus, like always the opposite sign of the middle. Okay, but because it was minus, then I'm gonna put plus. Okay? Now that same thing I put up, I'm gonna put under the line also. So we're gonna multiply this. See, okay, we're gonna multiply this thingy. How are we gonna do that? Well, we're gonna use basically distributive property. Okay, so let's see what do we get in here. What do we get? Up 17 times 2, that will be 34. 17 times 3i, that will be plus g, 10, 30, and 21, 51. 51i. Okay. Then negative 19. Negative 19 times 2 will be negative 20 and 18, that will be 38. Negative 38i. Okay. And negative 19 times 3, that will be 30, and 9 times 3, 27. That will be minus 57. And if you notice, we're multiplying I times I, right? Because it's minus 19I times 3I. So that will be minus 57I squared. And now we continue with the multiplication of the denominators. 2 times 2 and 2 times 3I. So 2 times 2 will be 4. And 2 times 3I will be positive 6I. Then, once we finished multiplying with 2, we're going to multiply with minus 3i. So minus 3i times 2 and minus 3i times 3i. So minus 3i times 2 will be minus 6i. And minus 3i times positive 3i, that will be minus 3, and 3 will be minus 9. And I times I will be I squared. Okay? Here we go. Now, we're going to simplify like terms up and down. So we're going to copy this thing, but we're going to simplify the like terms. So what we have in this case will be that I can subtract these things, the 51 and the 38. Okay, so 51 minus 38, that will be 13. Okay, so 51i minus 38i will be 13i. And 6i minus 6i, that's 0, so basically it disappears. Okay, we cancel them. Goodbye. Okay. Now, what happens with the I squared? Remember what I told you before on the previous exercise. The I squared basically transforms this number in the same number with a different sign. Okay, because we have minus 57 with the I squared, we're gonna have positive 57. Because we have minus 9 with the I squared, once we use it, we're gonna get positive 9. Okay, so all we have to do now is basically simplify like terms again. This number is a real number, and this is also a real number, so we can add them. The answer will be 34 plus 57 is 91. And 4 plus 9 will be 13. Okay. Now, we kind of like transformed the denominator into a normal number, a real number. Okay, so what we're gonna do is try to divide both numbers up with the denominator, like 91 divided by 13 and 13i divided by 13. Okay, so what will be the answer for this thing? 91 divided by 13 is 7. Okay, and 13i divided by 13 is just dividing the numbers. 13 divided by 13 is 1, and the letter we copy it. Remember that we cannot put 1 with letters. That 1 will be invisible, so we're just going to put I. It will be 7 plus I, and that will be the answer of this exercise.